Hello everyone, it's it's Steve here, and welcome to the American Fitbaw Cast. That was We'll Always Have Forever by Army of Freshmen. Give them a check out on the old Spotify. And I'm going to introduce you to my two co-hosts that will be joining me on this adventure over the next several months, years hopefully. Over to you guys. Let's go reverse alphabetical. Introduce yourself.
Hey, it's Gav, and I'm feeling extremely awkward. I'm speaking to a camera that I don't know, I've just met. It's like a first date. It's nice. I feel like we've already ran out of chat. I feel like I've already killed it. But yeah, I guess I've frozen. Yeah, so I'm feeling.
Is that computer use again?
I've not. The computer's fine. It's me personally that's frozen. I feel like I'm now. It's definitely that first date now where I just can't stop talking. And I don't know what to do, so I feel like I'm just gonna stop and just.
So I'm gonna take over from here and introduce myself. I'm Andrew. And yeah, I look forward to being on this journey with you for however long we last. So
hopefully more than 1 week.
Today, Steve.
Cool. So we'll talk a wee bit more. We'll introduce ourselves a little bit more about favourite teams and things like that, and why we like NFL so much, or not, or whatever. We're gonna do a good chinwag about the quarterbacks today. That is going to be the bulk of our episode 1. And then the flurry of activity that's happened with the trade world is going to get talked about. And we've also picked 2 free agents. We've picked an offensive and a defensive person each. And we're going to talk about where we think they should go. So, starting off with myself, probably about 10 years I've been watching NFL now. I have no favourite team. I am one of these weird ones where I'll love the game forever. I watch any game that's on. Doesn't matter who's playing. I probably will have an affinity to one over the other, but on the whole, it doesn't really matter. I'm quite happy with whoever's playing. My favourite player currently is the monster JJ Watt. Absolutely love that guy. What a machine! His off-season program is the stuff of absolute legend. And he's just a top guy. My other thing as well, I went to see a game of the Lingerie Football League when I was in Vegas, and that was awesome. Gav,
I've been an American football fan for probably about 3 years. I'm not going to say anymore. I don't have any nostalgia other than just the last few years. Although I would say that I kind of really grew into it really quickly and taken a lot in a short period of time, and feel that I've almost fast tracked my knowledge in the game. I'm one of these people that love the drama, the conspiracies, the velocity, everything that comes with it. The volatility rather than the velocity. I'm sorry. But yeah, been to Wembley twice. Went to see the Jags beat the Bills and saw Alan Hearn score a last-minute touchdown. It was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And then went to see the Redskins and the Bengals draw. Who even draws in American football? What's that all about? Only the Redskins can draw in American football. Favourite player? I'm going to say right now it's probably Tyreek Hill from the Kansas City Chiefs. I love his explosiveness, just all the things that he can do, and just how easy he makes it look. It's a different level of ability. So yeah, that's it for me. I'll pass on to Andrew.
Yeah, so I first got into, the first game I ever watched was the 2009 Super Bowl, where the Saints beat the Colts. From then on, for a good few years, I was a Super Bowl watcher, but never really got hooked into the regular season. It was always, you'd watch the Super Bowl in February, and then I'd go, yeah, I'm going to really get into that next year. But it takes so long for the regular season to come round again in September, but by the time it comes round, it's out your head. So I sort of never really got into it. And then Amazon did All or Nothing. And I watched that quite quickly. Maybe watched through that first series, which followed the Cardinals through the 2015 season over the course of a week or so. And that really hooked me. It didn't only hook me into the game, it hooked me into being a Cardinals fan as well. So the 2016 season, just because the timing of when I watched All or Nothing, it was just as the season was kicking off. So it then really got me into that, so I became a regular watcher at that point. Following it through watching Red Zone on a Sunday, and then the BBC shows through the week, which I think are terrific for someone who's new to the game because they explain things so well. Last year I then went to Twickenham to see the Cardinals, and the less said about that result the better. How rare is it for a team to be shut out? Yeah, and I was there, thanks. But that's how I got into it.
Cool.
It's great fun.
Yes, absolutely. So that's definitely one thing we want to try and do for you as well as listening, is gear it a little bit towards the new people to NFL. I think Andrew will be very good at that, at helping us with that, because he might stop and ask us at points and go, what do you mean by this, and what's this about, and what are we talking about here, which allows sort of Gavin and myself to expand on things a bit more.
I am definitely the rookie of the group, so any new people to the game listening, hopefully I'll be asking the questions that you're asking as well.
That is the hope, yes. So on to part one then. So we're going to talk about the off-season quarterback carousel. Gav is going to start us off. Gav, who are you going to start off talking about today?
For those of you that know me, will know that there's only one place for me to start, and that's with an elite quarterback, and I don't use that phrase lightly. Tyrod Taylor.
You just said elite.
I know.
He is elite. I'm okay. I'm okay with defending that. So Tyrod Taylor. So obviously, for those of you that have the NFL app or go on the website or have social media and follow some of these people, will see that he has recently joined the Browns, and I do wholeheartedly believe that he is going to be the sort of guy that's going to help turn them around. I think that his skill set will actually work really well for Hugh Jackson, because Tyrod Taylor he's a mobile quarterback, so he gives you more options. He doesn't have to stay in the pocket. He can give that versatility to Hugh Jackson when it comes to play calling, and I think that dual threat is something that Deshaun Kaiser actually was probably quite effective at it, and that was one of the Browns' strengths last year. So I definitely think that Tyrod Taylor's an upgrade on that part. And I think last year, I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but I think Tyrod Taylor's touchdown to interception ratio was one of the best in the league. And I think that stability is exactly what the Browns need. I mean, Taylor's not going to do anything flashy like throw up 50-yard bombs. He's not got the strongest arms, but what he is going to do, he's going to get you your first down. He's going to keep the offense on the field. And one of the biggest challenges for the Browns was that their defense, which is actually pretty good, but it's just they get gassed because they're on the field so all the time because of how weak the offense has been in the last few years. And I think obviously again we'll touch on it later, but some of the additions that the Browns have made and some of the rumours that what they're looking to do in the draft, I think that could be a real benefit from Taylor, because the one thing that I would point out, so I've managed to pull the stats up for Tyrod Taylor. For the last 3 years he's had 20, 17 and 14 touchdowns, but bear in mind the Bills wide receiver core has been pretty poor, so I'm gonna of the fact that those numbers have trajected downwards, and put that more onto the fact that he lost Sammy Watkins. There was a change of head coach. They made that ridiculous move where they put Nathan Peterman in, and then managed to sub Nathan Peterman back out, and Tyrod Taylor managed to actually make that a credible game for them, considering. I think for Hugh Jackson to have that sort of quarterback, who will bring stability, who will bring Hugh Jackson's strength is his play calling, or so we're led to believe. And I think that Taylor will actually suit that more, and I think you don't have the rookie nerves or any of that sort of stuff. So the flashes that we've seen with Deshaun Kaiser, the things that he was doing really well, we'll see more of that with Taylor. And if again, just all leading back to the same thing, if their defense isn't completely gassed, and Greg Williams, he does set up a pretty good D, and I think that the things that he's talking about are really, really exciting for the Browns about playing positionless defense, which should hopefully make them really fluid. And I do think that Taylor can be the guy to push the Browns on an upward trajectory. What do you guys think, Steve? What's your thoughts, being our hipster Browns fan?
Oh, here we go. Yeah, this is going to be a running joke, I think. So every year, what I do is I always like to pick one or two teams that have done really poor the year before or in previous years, and kind of root for them as the season comes up. So last year it was the Jags and the Browns. Obviously, the Jags have kind of moved up a gear now. They hit the playoffs. So it'll just be purely the Browns this season. So ever since Andrew's like, you hipster. It's like, oh, thanks, man. Anyway, back to Tyrod Taylor. So obviously we were chatting about this sort of earlier on in the week before all the moves got announced. So I put in thoughts down of where I wanted him to go, and what I thought they would do with Tyrod is I thought maybe he would go to Arizona and sit there for a year or two before they got their guy. He would be the bridge quarterback for the Cardinals. But I also thought maybe he would have gone to Jacksonville as a backup, but then sitting there waiting just in case Bortles flames out again, and then that would be kind of like his redemption. He'd get a decent job at a decent team with some decent players. So that's kind of where I thought he may have gone. But obviously it's all, he's gone at the Browns. I don't hate that move at all. I think that's pretty good for him, especially. And I hope he does. And I hope he does good. Andrew?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. It does seem, certainly in the immediate term, a good move for both parties. What I would say, though, is I think it's still a dead cert that the Browns are going to draft a quarterback pretty high up. Whether it's at 1 or 4, we'll wait and see. I think they should take Barkley at 1 and a quarterback at 4. There's enough high-level quarterbacks in the draft this year that there will be someone there for them at 4. So that then begs the question of how long do you see Tyrod Taylor starting in Cleveland? So will he last the full season? Will he be replaced after 8 weeks? Or do you think in a year's time we will be here chatting and Tyrod Taylor will still be the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns? I don't know. That's the questions it raises for me.
No, and it's a good shout. It totally is. Yeah. I think we're probably all in agreement. He is unfortunately that bridge guy. I'm pretty sure the Browns are going to take a quarterback with their first round, and he's going to be the guy probably from next year onwards. A bit like what Kansas City did taking Mahomes last year. They traded up for him, they got him, and they sat him on the bench for a year, knowing fine well he was going to be taken over. And I think that's what the Browns will do this year coming up. So it's maybe more a case of where does Tyrod go next year. We'll probably have the same conversation 12 months from now. Okay, so moving on then. Next, Andrew, you want to start off with Mr. Case Keenum?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. I first became aware of Case Keenum when I watched season 2 of All or Nothing, and I thought as a person he comes across incredibly well every time you listen to him. There's a few potential landing spots. A lot of it depends, I think, on a man that we will discuss soon in Kirk Cousins. So will he end up in Minnesota? Again, maybe not. Where I would like to see him, maybe there's an Arizona bias coming in here, but I would like to see him end up at the Cardinals. I think he's mobile enough to cope with what is a poor offensive line in the desert at the moment, although I expect that's something that will be addressed over the course of this off-season. There's a couple of big names in the offense that will tempt him there. You've obviously got David Johnson and you've got the legend that is Larry Fitzgerald. As they should be fairly big reasons for him to join there. yeah, that's where I think he'll be. What do you guys think?
See, yeah, I mean, Case Keenum obviously last year had an amazing season with the Vikings. The one thing that I would be apprehensive about is Case Keenum also had that pretty horrific season with the Rams. And the only reason he started with the Vikings is because the two guys ahead of him were both injured. And Bridgewater and Bradford, who I guess will also touch. And not to be pessimistic about him.
Not literally, though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But yeah, not to be completely down and out against him, because he did really push that offense, and especially when you consider they lost some big pieces throughout the season. I think Keenum could be similar to, I guess, the conversation that we had with Tyrod Taylor. I think he is just going to be that 1 year, maybe 2 year max stopgap until you find your elite person. But I don't think he'll struggle to find a home. I think there's plenty of places where we'll look and go, I'm comfortable with that guy being my backup because I've seen what he can do coming off the bench. So I think he's a really secure option for a lot of teams. And I guess I think just to touch on what Andrew said, I do actually think the Cards is probably a good fit because his mobility is sort of underrated, and I think that as soon as you don't have those guys up front giving you time, you need to be able to adjust. And I think his mobility was something that will help David Johnson, because obviously Carson Palmer was old and frail. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it so far.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I kind of agree with both of you. I also had Keenum going to Arizona. That was, well, obviously if Tyrod didn't, if they didn't get Tyrod, then Keenum would have been, a sort of kind of backup. And I'm totally hoping he does capture what he did with the Vikings. Was it just an anomaly? He had a bad time with the Rams. Has he turned a corner? He's certainly got pieces there what he can do with, with the Cardinals. So fingers crossed for him. We'll soon find out. That all kicks off next week. So moving on next, who we got? So next one I want to chat about is Teddy Bridgewater. What a guy. Absolutely busted his knee up. Some people didn't even know if he would ever play again. And then he did that brilliant walk on late in the season just to throw a couple of balls and got an absolute rapturous applause. That's where I hope he stays at the Vikings and comes good. I'm always a rooting for the underdog kind of type guy, and I really hope that one he wants to stay, 2 that he does, and 3 that he returns to the form he was a couple of years ago. And then Vikings actually then aren't in such a bad place. They've got the quarterback that they had drafted a few years ago, and they'll take him. That's obviously if they miss out on the Cousins sweepstake, which we'll chat about in a second. So, but my hope for Teddy Bridgewater was that he stays with the Vikings and recaptures a bit of that form he had from a couple of years back. What about yourself, Gav?
I'm going to go a little bit left field here, and obviously it does make sense him staying at the Vikings, but it'd be boring if we just all agreed with everything that we spoke about. So my landing spot for Teddy B is actually the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the reason for that is there's been quite a lot of chit chat about Big Ben. Will he stay? Won't he stay? I think he does stay another year, but I think even when you watch the games that he plays now, when he gets a big hit, it does take him that little bit longer to get back on his feet, and that sign of just degrading in terms of a physical ability is there. He's got plenty of amazing pieces to bail him out. You can throw a 20-80 ball, if you will, to Antonio Brown, and you can still hope that he's going to get that. So my reasoning behind Teddy B is that he's that bridge quarterback that's there for Big Ben to give them stability in the system, to not put any immediate pressure on the guy they draft to follow Big Ben. So that's my sort of thinking behind it.
Yeah, I really like that shout, Gav. that actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, you talked about the physical frailty of Big Ben. We've also got to remember that this is a guy, after the horror show we put on against the Jaguars early in the season, said, I don't know if I have it anymore. So there's also that mental fragility possibly coming into his game. So yeah, Bridgewater going there potentially does make sense. I think the one thing about Bridgewater is that he has his injury concerns, but I think everyone can agree that of all the quarterbacks hitting free agency this year, Bridgewater has the highest ceiling. He's the guy that could be the elite quarterback of sort of the next 10 years or so, if he stays healthy, which is obviously a huge question. So I don't know. Does he end up at a team that can take a risk? I'm not sure. I'm not sure where he ends up, but I like him both the staying at the Vikings and the thought of him going to the Steelers very much.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's a good shout, actually. Yeah, and Echo's thoughts on another quarterback that we'll talk about in a couple of spaces. So next up on the list is, of course, the big fish of this year's free agency, and actually arguably of free agency in the last 5, 6, 7 years, maybe even ever. Has a guy like this ever come anywhere close to being at free agency? So Gav, being the Redskins fan, I'll let you kick off on that, and that is Kirk Cousins.
I tried to keep it anonymous that I supported the Redskins,
Yeah,
so
we're getting that out there nice.
Absolutely.
And
Throw him some love on Twitter, everyone. Boo, Redskins suck. I'm all in favour of that.
Yeah. Okay, so Kirk Cousins. So obviously this guy is rumoured to be the first player to ever have a fully guaranteed contract, which is just nuts. That's, Kirk Cousins, let's just remember this, Kirk Cousins is going to be the first player to get a fully guaranteed contract. Not Tom Brady, not Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins. And that's all just about, I suppose, timing rather than anything else. The fit for Kirk Cousins that I like the most is actually the Vikings. I think that they've got the most cap room that can give him a real contract in terms of teams that need as well. And I think they're the closest to being a Super Bowl team. I think he goes somewhere where he gets paid, and he goes somewhere where he can win. Kirk Cousins, I obviously as a Redskins fan, I have a really mixed view on him. Sometimes he does look elite. And I don't use that lightly. I actually mean it this time opposed to Tyrod. He can look elite. He has got a big arm. He's a leader. He's got a lot of weapons. He's really mobile. And has a lot of things in the locker. He obviously bet on himself, which is an interesting tactic, and it sort of worked out for him. But the one thing that I would say that hasn't really got discussed too much in terms of Kirk Cousins is his numbers have actually went down every year. So I've managed to pull up the passer ratings for Kirk Cousins. 2015, 101.6. 2016, 97.2. 2017, 93.9. And those are still good numbers. But I think that my biggest issue with Kirk Cousins is his decision making. There was a game specifically where we played the Dallas Cowboys, and I think it was December, and just everything he'd done was it was the wrong move. He was overlooking people, overshooting passes, getting picked off, staying too long in the pocket. He just needs to trust his instincts more, and that's when he's the elite quarterback, when he's given time to think. And when he's left alone for too long, he does become that rabbit in the headlights. Just to put it out there that, as much as everyone's talking about where will he go and all this money he's going to get, he does have a lot of flaws, and he could easily go somewhere and flame out.
So,
Andrew, what do you think?
Well, you've pointed out a lot of things there, Gav, but what you haven't said is where do you think you'll end up?
I did. I said Minnesota Vikings at the start.
We'll edit that out.
I'm totally keeping that in. Yeah, no, that's all right. All right, on you go, Andrew. Where are you thinking he's going to go?
Yeah, I think the strong favourites for him obviously are the Vikings at the moment. There's the 5 clear options out there as to where he ends up. You've got the Vikings, the Cardinals, the Jets, the Broncos, and who's the 5th that's totally escaped my mind?
It was the Browns.
Of course it was the Browns, but now they've got Tyrod. That's probably not going to happen. So of the 4 that are left, Cardinals might be a good fit, but given what Gav's highlighted in his poor decision making, when you've got a poor offensive line where he's going to end up under a lot of pressure, do you want a quarterback in there that's going to make the wrong decision? I don't think that ends particularly well. The Broncos, well, what do they do to quarterbacks? Quarterbacks don't work there, so I don't think it's a wise move to go there. So I think you're down to the Jets and the Vikings. The Jets, they obviously don't have the same pieces in their offense as the Vikings do. So I think for Cousins, the Vikings make the most sense. And the rumour that they're going to give him that $90 million fully guaranteed contract, which just sounds insane. So yeah, I think the Vikings is where he ends up. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, 90 million fully guaranteed is insane, but it is going to become the norm. He will be probably the first 30 million a year quarterback, with the way the salary cap just keeps jumping up, every 10 million year on year. This is the beginning, and I think that's what Drew Brees is holding out for, waiting to see what Cousins get before he renegotiates. Aaron Rodgers is going to renegotiate, and they're all going to end up getting either the same or more than him anyway. He's just setting the new standard of what the quarterback will be. As far as where he's going to go, so I had 2 teams down for him. Team number 1 being the Browns, which, obviously they're kind of out the running now, and the second one were the Bills. Now, obviously they may not have the salary cap to go and do it, but I was kind of thinking more of a, an ideal world, where would he go? And the reason for both teams is pretty much the same kind of reason. I want him to go and challenge himself. I want him to go to a team that has nothing or close to nothing, and he is going to be the guy. He is going to take over, he's going to win the hearts of an entire fan base, and he's going to go down in absolute history as being that guy who came in and won us something good, rather than, it totally makes sense. Yeah, go to the Vikings, all the pieces are there, it's going to be piss easy. No, I want him to go, somewhere where it's a lot tougher. So the teams that are left, I probably would say then the Jets is maybe the toughest gig for him to have, so I'll probably put my hat on the Jets then for Cousins. Sound alright, or are you a bit like, nah, shut up, Steve?
My thought on it is just that the guy's going to want to put a ring on his finger, to be just bluntly honest there. So I think the best chance of him getting that ring is to go to Minnesota.
Totally, Gav.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll quickly touch on as well is I think that the Bills is actually quite a good shout. They have a decent offensive line. You've still got LaShawn McCoy, who can take a lot of pressure off a quarterback. Obviously, they've done extraordinarily well with Sean McDermott in his first year, considering all the pieces they shipped. Even like the way they let Watkins leave and all the rest of it, who was their only wide receiver. And they still done all the things they done. So I think the Bills could be quite fun. And I think if you want to win that division, the quarterback is absolutely essential. So you never know. The Bills could make a run for it.
There's plenty of teams that could, realistically. He's the kind of guy that when he would come on the market, you would do everything in your power to reshape and move your salary cap and do what you can to get the guy in. So, so that's Cousins. Anyway, that's what we think about Cousins. So who's next on the list then? Andrew, you're gonna kick us off with Mr. AJ McCarron.
Yeah, now this is an interesting one because I think to the majority of us, AJ McCarron is an unknown. He's sat on the bench behind Andy Dalton for the last however long, so we don't really know exactly what he's going to bring. The team I see him ending up at are a team that don't have many pieces. So I don't think they'll be able to attract the big names, the Cousins, even the Keenums, etc. But we've just touched on him there in the Cousins discussion. So I think McCarron will end up at the Bills. I think that it's a risk that they'll be willing to take. The other guys, as I said, maybe not being willing to go there, particularly with what happened with Tyrod Taylor over the last year. A solid performer who was then dropped to the bench and then sort of traded away. So yeah, I think the Bills is where McCarron ends up. Gav, what do you think?
So AJ McCarron, I think that he's got a whole lot of hype about him for pretty much nothing. So I'm not going to claim to know a whole lot about the college game, but I do know that he was at Alabama. Alabama have predominantly had really strong dudes in the trenches, and that takes so much pressure off a quarterback at any level. And they also had like a stellar defense, so again, takes a lot of pressure off him. So he was drafted, I think he was a 3rd round pick. Or a 4th round maybe.
I think so. Yeah.
But I actually see him going as a backup somewhere. I don't see him being a starter. I wouldn't be surprised if someone like the Patriots had him. If the Patriots pick him up and let him sit behind Tom Brady, that again gives you that bridge sort of quarterback. And I think the other thing is that also gives the Patriots the similar sort of ammunition they had with Garoppolo or Kobe Brissett. They've got a quarterback on their bench who has value opposed to Brian Hoyer. So yeah, that's what I sort of think. And I think Josh McDaniels, I don't think if he does take over for Belichick that he goes and drafts a QB to replace Tom Brady. I think he wants someone that knows the system, knows exactly what the Patriots are all about, and that's why I sort of think that McCarron behind Brady to give McDaniels the bridge is where he'll end up. Patriots.
Yeah, no, it works. I'm not going to put him in the same bracket as Jimmy G, though. I think I'm kind of with you. We don't know much about him. He had a bit of a cameo, which statistically seemed okay, but was that just good fortune when he played, who he played against, so I kind of thought when I was thinking, it would totally be a Browns move to go and get him because they missed out on him at the end of the trade window in October, and then they would go and get him. They would put him in a whole off season. He'd be brilliant. He'd do great in preseason. He'd hit the regular season. He'd just flame out and would be rubbish. And I'd be like, it'd be the so totally Browns move for him to do that. What I think will happen, and it's a shame, but I think someone's going to do a Glennon on him. I think the Jets or the Broncos are going to hook him up, in free agency, and think that he's going to be the guy for year one, and then they're obviously going to draft whoever they want as well for year two, but they will come in really quickly and take over, just as Trubinsky did to Glennon in Chicago last year, and that's what I think that's going to happen to that poor soul. So, who else we got then? So, Sam Bradford. That's who I was going to talk about next. Now, that's a bit of an interesting one, because obviously was he the last of the rookies to get the mega contracts when they were the first overall pick?
I think you're right,
I'm pretty sure he was. Before the rookie salary scale came in. So, he's had multiple massive contracts, and he's never, not in my opinion, he's never been that, second, not even that second tier. He's not elite. He's not a Rodgers. He's not a Brady and whatnot. But he's almost, to me, not even really scraped into that second tier, which is he should be based on his draft pedigree, what he did before. He's definitely going to get a chance. Where I think he might go is one of the four teams that are needing a bit of a stopgap looking to the future. So you've got the Giants, the Saints, the Pats, or the Chargers, because they're obviously their number one guys in their last 1-2 years maximum. I think one of them would be sensible to try and snap up Bradford at a half decent contract as a backup, with a view to moving them in to be their number one slightly further down the line. Gav, what do you think?
Yes, Sam Bradford's a weird one, because before he got injured, he looked really good. I remember, I'm sure it was the New Orleans Saints game, he was, at the start of the season, he looked just unbelievable. But the problem with Bradford is the injuries are, they're guaranteed to be there. And I know it's there for every team, but he is, there's a big injury risk for me. So I think what makes the most sense here is if Bradford, so you need a good offensive line to give him protection. There's no point in him going to the Cardinals. There's no point in him going to the Broncos, because he takes a couple hits, that's him done. I actually say that you're the Vikings and you stick with Bradford out of all three quarterbacks. I don't think you lose all three. I think you keep Bradford in case the Cousins deal doesn't work out, and you then have someone who can still be a starter, can still play at a high level, and can also be someone that if you are to then draft a rookie because you never got Cousins, that's your bridge there, and keeps the continuity at Minnesota as well. Andrew?
Yeah, I think I'm now reaching a point where, with my rookie status in the game, I'm struggling to give full insight into where I think people will land. I've not seen a huge amount of Bradford, I have to say, in the time I've been watching it. Of the teams, that we've not really nailed anyone to go to the Jets, so just for the sake of saying someone's going to go to the Jets, I'm putting Bradford to the Jets.
Shout out to David Hamilton.
Yeah. Let's hope he listens. We have one listener. All right, who else? Anyone got anyone else they want to talk about? How about the Geno Coaster? Geno Smith, is he gonna get anything? Nah, I'm only kidding. He's gonna get a training camp job and he's gonna get cut in final.
What about this one? Just as an interesting one, does Johnny Manziel get a team?
Oh, I didn't know. I wondered if you were going to throw his name in the mix. So yeah, Johnny Manziel. If the rumors are to be believed, and he has turned the corner, and he is going to come back, and he's going to play for not a lot of money, he might get an off-season shot, but I don't think it's going to turn into anything. His best route into coming back is the Canadian Football League, and actually going and proving it, and then getting in maybe 1-2 years from now.
I'm gonna say for Johnny Manziel, you need. So let's just imagine he does get right, okay? Just for the purpose of this conversation, he gets right, he gets on track. I'm gonna say Johnny Manziel actually gets picked up by the Jags, and the reason behind that is that Tom Coughlin doesn't take any shit, and they have a really strong culture, and that's the sort of surroundings that Johnny Manziel needs. And there's so many leaders in that team that aren't going to tolerate him not pulling his weight. So I think that's the sort of place. I think, I'm not saying that he would ever challenge Blake Bortles, but if there was a good quarterback on a good team that could give you a chance of playing, it's Blake Bortles. Andrew, I don't know if you've seen much of Johnny Manziel at all.
No, his involvement in the game was before my time. The only quarterback outside of the game at the moment that I think has to be mentioned if we're going down this route, does Colin Kaepernick make a return? Who knows? Is anyone brave enough to take him? Is anyone brave enough not to take him?
I don't.
What do you guys think?
League's freezing him out. He is winning his court battle. No one's going to take him. Nah, he's had his time. He's done.
The only and again for the purpose of the conversation, the only way Cap gets picked up is if something's happening at a team where they need to remove the pressure from something. So they need a different story. So if they want people to not be talking about their performance, they want people to be talking about something else, that's the only way I can see him getting a gig. But yeah, I think there's more chance of me playing in the NFL next year, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you're about right there, dude. Yeah, cool. So that's our big thing. Yep. Sorry.
I actually think Cap will end up as the poster boy for the XFL when it.
Yes, the XFL, much touted. It is going ahead.
Is that
isn't
the
it?
Vince McMahon thing?
Vince is signed. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah, it's not this season though. Is there some kind of developmental league coming on this spring with 4 teams, or am I just making that up?
That's where Johnny Manziel is making his return. It's the spring series, I think.
That's it. Yeah, that rings a bell.
Yeah, so there's 4 teams playing each other once, and that's where Manziel's going to make his comeback, in the hope of then getting tryouts with NFL teams after that.
Cool. Okay, well that's kind of the big 6 inverted commas off season and quarterback. How do we chit chat about them? I think time is flying by. I actually was surprised we blethered as much as we did on them. Let's jump into the free agents then. So we've got 6 free agents, two each got offensive and a defensive player, and where we think they're going to go. So I started off with Andrew Norwell, and he's not going to be much touted. He's certainly one of these types of players like Andrew Whitworth last year, who should be talked about a lot but isn't, and that's a lot of the case. A lot of good offensive line players, you won't hear about them much, but actually that's because they're doing the job really, really well. I think where I'd like him to go, I want the Texans to pick him up. They lost Dwayne Brown last year at tackle, so their offensive line's just a little bit rustier than it was. You've got Deshaun Watson coming back from injury, so you need a bit of an O-line improvement anyway. Pay him the money, get him in, and that'll hopefully help the Texans kick on again. Anyone had any other thoughts on Norwell?
I think that offensive line is probably behind the quarterback is the most valuable position in terms of what they bring to the team, because if you don't have a good O-line, you probably don't have a good QB, or you have a good QB who can't do what he needs to do. And there is so many teams that need pieces on up front. I think that he's a really probably is one of the elite offensive linemen, and I like the shout of going to the Texans. But I'm going to say that, just to touch slightly differently, I'm going to say that he goes to the Jets and gets paid a hell of a lot of money. Andrew, any thoughts?
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, no, I don't have a huge amount of thoughts on this part, I have to say, because of my knowledge is not huge still when I'm so hopefully new people listening are as interested in this discussion as I am at the moment.
Yeah, I'd absolutely get on the Twitter and tell us where you want all these people to go. We like the interaction. Give us a shout. Okay, so Andrew, so you've got who do you want to talk about then? You got a couple of people you picked, haven't you?
Yeah, so offensively, I went for a tight end, Jimmy Graham, moving on from the Seahawks, it looks. Now, he was much criticised last year. People didn't seem to think he had that great a year, yet he still posed a huge end zone threat. I was more aware of that than most. He was in my fantasy team, so thanks, Gav, for handing to me him on trade. That was much appreciated.
How did it work out for you?
And well, let's not go on.
Oh, here we go.
Any further with that. Let's not go any further with that.
Yeah, what's that I hear Gav saying?
But
do you want to jump in there and say something?
Season, we're moving on from it.
It's okay. I'll make sure that we touch on it.
Sorry, Andrew. Carry on. Yeah.
So yeah. Towards the end of last season, he seemed to really hit a run where it was a touchdown every week, and I think one of the strong rumours is that he goes back to where he came from and back down to New Orleans. So for that offense to then have another end zone threat when you've already got that dual-headed beast at running back with Ingram and Kamara, they've already got Ginn and Thomas at receivers, scoring touchdowns aplenty. I think adding another threat with Jimmy Graham there makes them an even more exciting prospect. What are your thoughts on this, Gav?
Jimmy G, yeah, I think everything you said about him going to the Saints makes perfect sense. Jimmy G too.
yeah, just to get confused there with the old Garoppolo.
Yeah,
well, surely he's Jimmy G1.
Nah.
True, yes, he was the original before Jimmy G actually did take over.
I was ranking it on who has a better bank balance right now.
Oh no, I think you're still going to find the tight
okay.
end,
I'm going to
Graham.
base it on who's got a bigger contract right now.
Yes, true. Sorry, anyway, carry on.
Jimmy Graham. I think that makes sense. What I would say, if the Seahawks do not tie him down, they are in serious trouble. They've got no serious wideys. Well, Doug Baldwin is good, but he's not elite. I don't care what anyone says. He's not an elite wide receiver. So yeah, if they lose him, I think that's a major blow. Steve being the sort of old guard of this team, if you will. Maybe you can tell us about Jimmy Graham's combine.
No, I'm not that good.
I was more referring to your age.
To go back and find out how he did. Yeah, thanks. Yes, the old guy. So Jimmy Graham, yeah. I mean, I watched back in the glory days when he was amazing, and he's back to back awesome seasons with the Saints. Sorry, I had a visitor there and she's disappeared very quickly. We realised I'm recording. Anyway, so yeah, obviously back to the Saints is one of the major rumours. Another rumour I seen briefly was him going to the Patriots to form a dual-headed beast with Gronk, which that would be pretty awesome if he did that. Where I would like him to go though is I think we punt him over to Baltimore and go and hook up with the Ravens, help out Joe Flacco a bit. They've obviously had Dennis Pitta, who just gets a hip injury every year. He hasn't played. He's just never kind of filled as being that guy. They haven't had a tight end for a while. They're struggling on wide receivers anyway. Flacco seems to be regressing, so give him a bit of help. So I've got the Ravens swooping in and trying to take Jimmy Graham.
Makes sense. Just to touch on your Patriots thing, Martellus Bennett was previously a high level tight end. That didn't work out too well with the Patriots dual headed there. Dwayne Allen, who wasn't elite, but that didn't work out there either. I think that's more of a Patriots fantasy than something that they're actually good at doing, or in recent years anyway. But I think if the Ravens pick up a tight end and Joe Flacco needs weapons as well because Mike Wallace is about to hit free agency, Jeremy Macklin's going to get cut, and as you mentioned, all their tight ends are pretty much injured all the time.
Yep. All right, who's next on the list there? We have all talked about Jimmy Graham. I'm obviously getting it with my old age and stuff and forgetting everything. Nah, I'm only joking. Yeah, we have. Cool. Okay, so Gav, you kick us off one of your
yeah. So originally I was going to do Tyler Eifert, but that was through not realising that Andrew had actually picked Jimmy G. So I'm gonna change my pick. It's just so we're not just talking about tight ends. So I'm gonna change over to Allen Robinson from the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Just 1 second before you do that. See this? This is me ripping up all my notes because I prepared this. Carry on.
Okay, so this is when we're straight up freewheeling, and this is where we'll see if we're actually any good at this or not, I suppose.
Yeah.
So Allen Robinson. Okay, let me try and run through this pretty quickly. Allen Robinson, pre-injury, was one of the best wideys in the league. He's young. He's explosive. I'm gonna say he's like a Antonio Brown light. He has the same sort of skill set. You can throw those contested balls up there and he's going to catch them. He's going to give you that chance, especially when you think he's had Blake Bortles thrown to him. Let's just remember that, Blake Bortles thrown to him. And for the numbers that he put up, I think that he's someone that would not struggle to find suitors if the Jags don't tie him up. What I would love to see is Allen Robinson, and this is maybe a little bit of a controversial one, Allen Robinson to go to the Packers. And my thinking behind that is the regression of Jordan Nelson. And I know that Rodgers was out. I get that. But Jordan Nelson's had a lot of injuries himself. You just move Nelson into the slot. You let Robinson be your main guy. You let Rodgers win another Super Bowl. It's highly unlikely to happen. I get that. And this is more so just about what I'd like to see rather than what reality is. But that's my sort of thinking behind Allen Robinson. Any of you guys got any thoughts?
No, absolutely. Well, because we're riffing and I'm just throwing the ideas in the head. Let's go with. Do you know where I want to put him? I want to put him at Tampa Bay. Chuck him on the opposite side of Mike Evans, and you've got two absolute awesome. I was going to say kick ass. Yeah, we can say kick ass. That's fine. Awesome wide receivers down both ends of the field, and that would really help Jameis Winston as well. That's probably where I'd throw him at. Yeah, I mean you've obviously got you can go to the Jets, you can go to the teams that are needing help. The teams that are the reason they're picking high in the draft is because they need players. So put him up to the Giants, give him the Colts. There's loads of teams that'll take him. Let's be honest, he's not going to be struggling.
What I was thinking about Robinson is again kind of similar to what we spoke about earlier, but I just don't see him going to get paid. I think he's been at Jacksonville where they've struggled up until recently. I know he was injured last year and missed most, if not all of the season. I think he only played something like 4 or 5 snaps before he went down. So I think he goes somewhere where he's going to be a contender, somewhere where he can win. And that's where I got my sort of thinking behind the Packers. Andrew, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I've been doing my research as you guys have been speaking, since you've just thrown that out there. So it seems the favourites to land Robinson are the 49ers.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
I like that.
That's good.
Particularly with Jimmy G 2.0.
You're coining that term, you're sticking it. Yes, I like it.
With his huge contract, to give him another option. I mean, they obviously the way they finished last year was mighty impressive. To give him another option to throw to, only it shows good things for the 49ers.
Yeah, I do like that one.
Yeah, that's a really good shout. I think Robinson gives Jimmy G 1.0 in terms of salary. Gives him a serious option, and I don't know how much you guys seen the 49ers last year, but Marquise Goodwin, who takes the absolute top off the defense. So you have him stretching the field. You've got Robinson there to give you that elite wide receiver. That's a nice fit. I like that one.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, let's settle on that then. That's where he's gonna go. We've all decided. All right, let's see who we got next. Big Mo Wilkerson. So had a couple of really, really good years in New York. Got paid like serious good money and has just done not a lot since, and has got cut only 2 years into a 5-year deal. It's the old the story of the guy who plays really well on his rookie contract or his first contract out, and then he gets his big payday and he just sits and gets all comfy and ultimately just doesn't play or put in the work that he needs to, and it's a shame, but it happens all the time. So he's obviously visiting the Packers. I actually quite like that move.
Yeah,
I think that's a good move for both. I'm thinking I just hope he doesn't sit there and become Albert Hainsworth 2.0. And for people listening, if you don't know who Albert Hainsworth is, go and find out. Andrew, you will love hearing about this guy.
What team was he at again?
He was at Tennessee when he plays right in the middle, Geno Atkins, Sheldon Richardson, right in the middle of the defense, and he played out his skin at Tennessee. He was just absolute game wrecker. He was brilliant, and he got traded to the Redskins on $100 million contract. I believe the first ever defensive player to get $100 million contract. I might need to double check that fact. Dan Snyder threw money at him, and he couldn't get fit. He couldn't pass the medicals at the start of seasons. He just totally flamed out. He basically took all his money. He partied like nobody's business. got himself into lots of trouble, and they gave up on him after about, I think it was only 2 years and about 40 million they'd given him. They just gave up on him. It was horrific. So yeah, Albert Hainsworth. Let's hopefully Mo Wilkerson does not end up being like him. Any other two you got thoughts on Mo Wilkerson?
Yeah, I think that's a good shout as well for the Packers. To be honest, I think Wilkerson is a wrecker when he's on his game, and one of the issues that the Packers have is that their D just does not help them in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, I like that. You have someone strong to put pressure on the quarterbacks, especially if you think Cousins could be playing in that league. You've got Matthew Stafford in that league, or that division, sorry. And the emergence of Mitchell Trubisky. So yeah, you need people that are going to get after these QBs, because all of those guys are good. So you need some strong support up front to get after those guys.
And with any luck, that would also help free up Clay Matthews to kind of come back to form, because he's kind of been a little bit lost in the wilderness the last couple of years. He was a rookie, he came out of the gates, had a couple of really awesome seasons, sack master. They chucked him back in linebacker. Also, it's just gone a little bit wrong for him. So maybe plugging Wilkerson in might free him up a bit. You never know.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Andrew, you got anything on Wilkerson?
Not really. Again, I'm just enjoying listening to you guys. On
Yeah.
that one.
This feels like I feel like
fine.
I'm back in work.
Yeah, we used to sit there and chat for 2 minutes during lunch break. We'll make that very clear every day. It was always during a lunch break only. Definitely not when we should have been working. Moving on swiftly. Who else have we got to talk about then? Andrew, you're defensive dude. Who are you going to throw out there?
Yeah, so I am not particularly familiar with a huge amount of defensive players. So in deciding which defensive player I was going to talk about, I went onto the NFL website and I looked at their list of 101 top free agents. And towards the top of the list was a guy called Sheldon Richardson. So I thought I'll talk about him. It seems that the favoured landing spot for him is another Seattle guy to go back to where he came from and end up back at the Jets. So yeah, the aforementioned David Hamilton will be very pleased that we're speaking about the Jets so much this evening. But I have no more insight to offer than that, so that is a provocation for a discussion. Gav, Steve, take it away.
Gav, you want to go?
No.
Nope, that's fine. Right, so Sheldon Richardson, yeah, he again, at the same time as Wilkerson, actually, that's when Sheldon Richardson was really kicking out of the park as well, and that Jets front seven was brutal for a couple of seasons. I mean, it's a shame they had no offense at the same time, because they had the defense to win them something, and Richardson was a big part of that. And he's kind of almost on the same thing. He's almost like, he was brilliant for a couple of years, and then for whatever reason it's just gone like, I'm not putting the work in now, blah blah blah, whatever. Anyway, so let's say he turns things around and he gets back into playing awesome football again. I had thought, I've kind of got two teams again. So how about pairing him with Geno Atkins in the middle of the Bengals defense?
Okay, I like that.
Can you imagine that as a 1-2 punch? That'd be pretty brutal.
Nasty.
As an interior, he'd really wreck some front lines. That could be quite good. But thinking then more along, kind of where you were going with the quarterbacks, where would he go that he might have a better chance to win something? I kept him in the AFC North and I shipped him up to Pittsburgh. I thought, they've got all the pieces to win. How about beefing up that defense a bit, and they go and sign a big hog like Richardson for the middle to try and help them kind of push that defense up another level.
That makes sense. I like that fit as well. I think people like Wilkerson and Richardson, these guys really should go places where they are going to win. I can see them, if they chase the money, their career's just going to fall downhill. They're going to get cut. They're going to end up at another team. They're going to get cut. They're going to end up at another team. So I think they need to go to teams where they're going to win, or where they're at least going to make the playoffs. I like that fit of the Steelers. Just to give something a little bit different, I'm going to say that a team that I would like him at, if he can get back to his true form, is actually my Washington Redskins. The reason being is we have one of the worst defensive lines. Alfred Morris made us look. Obviously, it was a revenge game, so that's slightly different. But Alfred Morris tore us a new whatever. So yeah, and if you've got to play Zeke Elliott, if you've got to play Jay Ajayi, whoever the Giants pick up off the street, you need people up front that are going to buy you that bit of time, that are going to stop that offensive drives. So I think Richardson of the Redskins would be quite a nice fit, and I think the Redskins are quite a weird team. I think we're really in a real middle ground. We're either close to being a proper playoff contender, or we're very close to complete implosion. A bit like Dan Schneider's personality.
No, that's fair. Yeah, no, I quite like that fit actually. Yeah, going helping out a team. Would he win now if he's gone there? You're going to struggle. You're a year or two away, I think. But I like the fit actually. That works quite well. Who's last on the docket?
I'm going to touch on Kenny Vaccaro from the New Orleans Saints. I think he's one of the best guys you'll find in the secondary. Probably doesn't get that much attention because he's not one to really, he's not the sort of aggressive secondary guys that we're used to. He just goes about his business, does his thing. And last year, the Saints obviously had an amazing run. And him and Marshawn Lattimore were absolutely at the front of that. Everyone spoke about Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. But those guys in the back end were flying about that field and, doing all sorts of stuff. In terms of fit for Kenny Vaccaro, I really like the fit at the Oakland Raiders. The reason being, so you've obviously made a big move to get John Gruden as your coach. You're not going to give him all that money if you're not going to back him to do something. So Vaccaro to the Raiders, who have an awful secondary. I think he is an immediate upgrade on everything they've got in that back end. And that means you can go draft someone like the similar way to the Saints done with Marshawn Lattimore, and then straight away you've got that 1-2 at the back end, and you can start to take some heat off of the defense if you've got people that can, be that ball hawk and track the ball. So yeah, I'm going kind of Vaccaro to the Raiders. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I quite like that. Did you deliberately go awful for all four of the back? Because if you did it deliberately, it was well. But if not, it just worked out perfect. 4 awfuls for the 4 positions.
Of course I did.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, Kenny Vaccaro, hard-hitting, no-nonsense safety. Came out of college, drafted really high. I think he was maybe 9th or 10th or something. The Saints drafted him that year. And did okay, and then as you say, it was almost no one gave him much kudos last year, but he played really well. What are teams that could use him? Bills, Bucks, maybe things like that. Shore up defense. He reminds me a lot. There's a player I used to watch for the Indianapolis Colts when I first got in it, so a few years ago.
1940.
Bob Sanders.
Before the leagues were merged.
General Sherman. Bob Sanders used to play for the Colts. This boy used to basically tackle with his head. He spent more games injured than he actually played. But he would. It was back in the glory days when a tackle was a tackle, before they started protecting everybody and stuff. Man alive, he'd fly over the field. He was amazing. And Kenny Vaccaro, he's basically, I think he's the modern day equivalent of that, or as close as you can get to it without getting your backside kicked. Where am I going to put him though? I am going to take him and I'm going to drop him up into Seattle. Legion and Boom 2.0, anybody?
That makes sense, especially if the new rumours are true that Earl Thomas is about to get shopped as well. Vaccaro's young. You can then rebuild your secondary round about him. And yeah, I think especially the division that the Seahawks are in, you need people that are going to pick up some of these guys.
Cool. Yeah, so that's our 6 free agents that we've picked on and where we think we're going to go. Obviously, the next time we talk, a lot of these moves will happen, so it'll be really interesting to see where these people have ended up. Did any of us get them right? In which case, one of us will be crying that we didn't put some money on it because we could have won some big bucks. What we got? We've got a few more minutes to blether. Let's spend a couple of minutes just chit chatting about some of the trades that have happened over the last week in particular, really. Gav, you want to kick us off with
yeah, okay. I'm gonna have to obviously touch on Alex Smith, just so that I don't ruin the run order and put everyone on their toes again. No other reason.
We've run out of time for this. This is getting wrapped up soon.
Okay,
but yeah. So just pick the one you want to talk about.
Alex Smith to the Redskins. I actually really like it. Alex Smith had a career year last year. We've got a really good offensive line when they're all healthy. I think Smith is a similar mould to Cousins in terms of they both have sneaky mobility. They both have pretty good arms. And I think that was something that was always questioned around about Alex Smith was, does he have the deep threat? Does he have that? And actually last year we found out it was more so the play call as opposed to his skill set. Because when the Chiefs did finally unleash him, you see him hit Tyreek Hill more often than not. So yeah, I really like this move, and I think it takes immediate pressure off of whoever we come in as our long-term successor, because Smith is dependable. He's not going to do anything stupid. He's got an O-line that's going to buy him time, and yeah, I think it's a good move overall. His contract's maybe a little bit overvalued, but I think, as you sort of mentioned earlier on, with the way that the caps are going and with the way the market's going, I think these are just going to soon be normal contracts. But yeah, I like the move. The only thing I didn't like about it was giving up Fuller from our secondary, because he was our best in that area. Better than Norman, better than Bashard Breeland. So yeah, that was the only thing I didn't particularly like about it. But yeah, I think Smith will be good for the Skins. Any thoughts?
So yeah, actually, yeah, I think your comment on it being overvalued, you're right. In the fullness of time, it's not going to be. You might think some people will be like, oh man, 19 million a year for Smith, really? But do you know what? He's done decent. He had a real rough ride coming out of college. He was first overall pick. He was at the 49ers, and he had 5 years where he was just basically rubbish. He just got his backside kicked week on week on week. And then they shipped him when Cap came in, and obviously they went on to the Super Bowl. So you can say they'd made the right move, and you think, poor Smith, he was the odd guy out, but he's turned it around in Kansas City for what, 4 years, maybe 5
yep.
now. He's done really well there, and he's helped take them up to the next level. And some people say he's like your game manager type quarterback. I think he's a bit better than that. I think he's firmly in the mix in that second tier alongside. The name's
like Joe Flacco,
Matt Ryan at the Falcons, and I don't know, Flacco's
he's digressed a bit,
off a little bit, but Matt Ryan at the Falcons. I could take either of the two of them and be reasonably happy enough. So yeah, I think it's a great move for the Redskins. I think it sorts out a problem they were going to have because of this franchise tagging Kirk 2 seasons in a row. Really messed everything up. They've created their own problem, and I think it works out quite well for them to get him as a bit of a fallback option. But he's not. But he's actually not a fallback option. He's going to be decent enough.
He can
for
take us to the playoffs.
Good few years.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, again, I just think he's a good fit. I think just everything about him to me seems. I actually think he's better than Cousins. Again, just because of that decision-making piece that I was talking about earlier on, I think Smith's not going to throw you into double coverage. He's not going to make those silly decisions. I think he'll check it down and he'll find the best option for that play, rather than throw that contested ball.
Cool. All right, let's chuck one more out there before we call it quits for tonight. Then, how about Landry to the Browns?
Andrew, love this move.
Yep.
Yeah, I think with the way the Browns are, I think it's a great move. you now look at their offense, and you've got Landry and Josh Gordon. And now, obviously, there's the question over Josh Gordon: can he keep himself clean? Is he going to manage to avoid suspension in future? Let's hope he does, because if he does, then he's one of the league's top receivers. Certainly on the form he showed before his last suspension, but there were certainly promising signs when he came back this year that he can get back to those heights. So I think that's a really exciting move, having both of them. They've brought in Tyrod at quarterback. Hopefully they'll bring in Saquon Barkley, and then another quarterback, and all of a sudden you've got an offense that looks really exciting. So yeah, I really like the move. In terms of what it means, Dolphins losing a player like that, it's to have lost him and G.A.J. over the past 6 months. I mean, that's a couple of big players gone. But yeah, from both Landry's perspective and the Browns' perspective, really good move.
Gav, you want to say anything about Landry?
I love it. I love every bit of this move. The only I think what Landry gives, and again, I don't know the specifics off of the top of my head, but I'm sure his, if it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 5, all these sort of numbers, I think he's one of the best at that sort of range. He's got great hands. He's elusive. He can, bob and weave throughout the defense to get you that first down, to keep you on the field. I think that for Tyrod Taylor, he's a nice complementary fit. Again, he's not had a widey of that caliber at any point. So yeah, I really like that. And you've got, as Andrew mentioned, you've got Josh Gordon there, who, if he stays healthy, that's a nice offensive weapon. And if they get Barkley, they already have a decent enough offensive line. The Browns could, climb. I don't want to get too optimistic about the Browns, but they could climb up the table a lot quicker than you would potentially imagine if they make these things happen. Because again, just as I said earlier on, their biggest issue was that their defense was on the field all the time. So yeah, Steve, as our Browns hipster fan, what do you think?
They might even make 2-14 this year.
Yeah, well, I think you set your stall out for 2 wins to begin with, because it's infinitely better than we've managed the last couple of years. I think Landry at the Browns, I'm totally with you two guys. It's a great move. I actually think it's a great move for both. I think he'd done his time in Miami. For whatever reason, they weren't happy with him. So to get him shipped, it works fine for them. I think the value they've got for them, though, is a bit odd, because I believe, is it a 4th and a 7th?
Yeah, that's right. 4th and 7.
That to me, that's nothing.
Yeah, I think
that is absolutely nothing for him. So the Browns are laughing all the way at the bank on this one.
Yeah, you have to remember as well that the Dolphins are a team that traded away Ajayi for just a 4th rounder.
Yeah, right enough. Right enough.
So I think if there's a player in Miami that you want, you ask for him, because you give him away for next year.
It's like great.
Do you think, just on the Dolphins side of it, do you think? So obviously Adam Gase has been quite a bumpy ride in general. There, do you think that the GM that's there just now is thinking, I'm going to stockpile some draft picks so that the next head coach that I get in has got ammunition to really do some damage and bring in his own team? Because I think that Gase will be 100% gone this year. I don't think he stays. I'm calling it right now that he gets chopped, and I think he'll be one of the first. And I think the Dolphins will really struggle. I like some of the moves they made in terms of their defense, but you've got Ryan Tannehill coming back off I don't know if it was a double ACL, but it was at least one sort of ACL, and he's already got an injury sort of history. You've got no running back. Kenyon Drake done okay, but will he be able to carry the load a full season? You've got no wide receivers. Why can I not remember his name? What's their other widey called again?
Kenny Stills.
Yeah, Kenny Stills. Yeah. So he's there to take the top off. He's your deep threat. But if you don't have a quarterback to throw it deep, then he becomes useless. Matt Moore is not good enough to be a quarterback starter. I can't see them I think even if they trade for one of these guys, move up in the draft to try and get Josh Allen or Josh Rosen, depending on how the draft day goes, I just don't feel good about the Dolphins this year. Even when you think Ndamukong Suh, as much of a game wrecker he's been, and Cameron Wake, they still really struggled as a defensive unit. So yeah, I'm worried about the Dolphins, and I think that what they're doing just now is they're banking these draft picks to use them as a enticer for the next head coach.
Yeah, that's a good shout, and I think we'll use that as a hook leading up to future episodes as well. Definitely we're gonna predict who's gonna be gone next year. That's going to be on the docket coming up over the next few weeks. I imagine the next episode more than likely is going to be fully about free agency, because that's all about to kick off in the next couple of days, and it's going to be great. We're going to chat through our combine favourites, people who have impressed us through the combine, and obviously the pro days that are coming up. We're going to talk about all the new coaches and where they've gone to. This obviously may not all be one episode. I mean, we with the plan we had for episode 1, we would still be here 2 hours from now if we actually done everything that we had slated that we were going to talk about. We have raced through time here. It's ridiculous.
Steve,
and we have.
I was just going to say, as you know, from our 2-minute lunch breaks, that I'm more than comfortable being here for the next 2 hours.
Oh yeah, but it's nearly 10 o'clock and I need my bed. The other thing as well we've got coming up is our inaugural Fitbaw Cast War Room, where we will draft the first round and the first pick. Because there's 3 of us, we make it 33 picks. It'll just be easier. So we'll get the first pick of the second round as well, and see who the Browns are going to take there. So we've got that coming up middle of April. Will we put it in for middle of April?
I think we maybe want to do it. Yeah, just before the draft's about to happen. So yeah.
Yeah, so sort of nearest as near to the draft as we can get before Mike Mayock releases his and then gives us all the answers. So I think we'll call it quits for now. Andrew, where can people get you?
You can get me on Twitter at AndrewDHD. If you want to find me personally, you can find us at the AFcast. If you want to come and speak to us, please come interact with at the AFcast on Twitter. We want to hear your thoughts, want to hear what you think about the things we've touched on today. So yeah, please get in touch.
Gav, where can everyone get you?
You'll find me on Twitter, hanging about with some of my elite NFL friends. So you can find me at GavJohnMill123. And you'll also find me on some podcast thing, maybe called the AFC Cast. Is that right? Did I do it right?
It's
Nearly.
Just the AF Cast. Come on now.
Oh yeah, because AFC's
episode 1. We can't get our own Twitter name right. Well done.
You guys don't pay me enough for this.
We pay you nothing. It's going to stay that way. You're just here for the bands. Thanks everyone for listening. As Andrew said, you can get us at the AFcast as well. We've got polls going up there. We retweet all the news that's going on. Chuck us your comments. If you're a Lions fan and you see us posting something about Green Bay and you want to throw some hate on there, I'm gonna love it. Yes, chuck it on the page. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we will see you next time. Thanks. Bye bye.